We're not alone in the universe. There's aliens, and their technology makes us look like orangutans driving golf carts. They can flip our nuclear weapon systems on and off like a toddler playing with a light switch. There's not a thing we can do to control them, and they're here, watching us. Or so claim 4 high-ranking individuals who recently stated their cases before the United States Congress, and they're very serious about what they believe to be true. It's possible our perspective on humanity's place in the cosmos may be on the brink of changing forever. But I find myself bored. Even though it's been well over a year since the first UFO hearing, nothing's really changed. There's still so much missing from what could arguably be the most important conversation in history. In this video, I'll explore what I wish was there. Some of it's stuff Congress could do better trying to include, some of it's not even their fault. It just sucks it's missing. But all of it could find its way into the conversation eventually if enough people and elected officials continue to push for it. If not, then the topic could grow even more stale, eventually falling off the priority list, which is a shame because a deeper understanding of it would touch all of our lives. If these strange crafts that break the known laws of physics were understood properly, then the world wouldn't need to be dirtied by fossil fuels anymore. All your monthly utility bills would be a thing of the past, and yes, your new hoverboard would finally be able to properly complete your Back to the Future Part 2 cosplay. However, before we dive into things, I want to give a little background on this particular UFO hearing, since we've got a completely new cast of characters compared to last time, and I'd like to bring those who are unfamiliar with things up to speed. In January of 2015, then Navy Commander Timothy Gallaudet received an alarming email in his inbox, the title written in all capital letters, Urgent Safety of Flight Issue. Either something unusual truly was afoot, or his colleague's caps lock button was stuck again. The message detailed a dilemma. Unidentified flying objects were zipping around pilots during a military exercise, and they were nearly colliding with them midair, and the supervisor had no idea what they were or where they came from. He wanted to know if anyone else did. And attached to that email was what's now known as the Go Fast video. One of 3 infamous UFO videos that leaked back in 2017 and were later confirmed to be real by the US Department of Defense in April of 2020. It was sort of like their little gift to Americans so they could have something to talk about during COVID quarantine. But the very next day, that email sent to Gallaudet disappeared from his inbox, and the incident was never discussed again. He was the first high-profile individual to give his testimony at the hearing this past November, claiming that there is an extreme overclassification of UFO information by the US government that not even he, a senior US military official, has access to. Seated to his left was Mr. Luis Elizondo, a former Department of Defense official. Elizondo not only claimed that UFO programs are real and able to operate without restriction, but that the secrecy surrounding the topic is so closely guarded, nothing's off limits to try to keep the lid on the truth. According to him, harassment, unwarranted criminal investigation, destruction of credibility, and threatening your very life are all options the UFO gatekeepers are willing to use to strike fear into the hearts of those they deem are in opposition to them. Kinda like my bitter ex-girlfriends. Of these programs being hidden with the same tenacity as Mr. Krabs guards the secret formula for Krabby Patties is one known as Immaculate Constellation, an effort to document UFOs that was presented by our third testimony giver, investigative journalist Michael Schellenberger. The project was detailed in a report that was given to him by a trusted anonymous source who claims they stumbled upon the information while simply doing their job at the Department of Defense. It's only about 11 pages long, but it details various things like how these secret programs are organized, how data on UFOs are collected, and even the different types of UFOs that have been observed. Orbs, saucers, triangles, boomerangs, even including a category called irregular or organic, which are UFOs that defy simple geometric description, probably for those artsy aliens that don't want to be labeled. The report implies that a great deal of effort has gone into studying a phenomena that, according to individuals in the US government, doesn't exist. A phenomena that even today struggles to be talked about because so few people want to take it seriously. Which brings me to the 4th and final individual who gave their testimony, Michael Gold, a former member of the NASA Independent UAP Study study team. One of the things he noticed during his work was the sheer amount of stigmatization around the topic, to the point pilots and other military officials were reluctant to come forward and share their stories. He compared it to how, in the past, people thought it was bonkers that the Earth wasn't flat, or that the sun didn't orbit around it, and anyone who said otherwise was basically burned at the stake for their beliefs. I believe you can equally compare it to when people thought you were crazy for saying Hamilton was overrated back in 2016. There were definitely some extraordinary claims at this latest congressional hearing, but like I said in the intro, I still came away from everything feeling a little bored. Because there's still gaps in the conversation. What's, whys, and hows that really need to be there if we're going to keep people's interest in things. Remember, the average attention span of an adult is 8.25 seconds. That's less than Elmo's goldfish. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is definitely gonna get some eye rolls, especially from people who are already all in believing what these testimony givers are claiming. Stick with me though. What I've got to say still needs to be said, and afterwards, I've got some other wild points I want to make, the last of which I've never seen anyone talk about before. I think you'll find it pretty interesting. Or stupid as hell. Realistically, I'm hoping for thought-provoking, like the way a tomato makes you wonder whether it's a vegetable or a fruit. And if it's a fruit, does that make ketchup a smoothie? With that little disclaimer out of the way, let me dive into my first point. Enough of this goof, give me some gosh darn proof. If I'm being quite honest, even I'm a little unhappy that I have to include this argument. But when you're talking about the most fantastical claims you could ever make, it's a little on the important side. The only thing above them would be like claiming George R.R. Martin had finally finished writing The Wind's a Winner. Real impossibilities, you know. I also want to be clear before I start. I want aliens to be real. Aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, I want to believe, baby. I don't take pleasure in poking holes. But it's been over a year since the first hearing, over 4 since the DoD confirmed the 3 infamous leaked UFO videos were legitimate, starting this whole thing, and 7 since they leaked in the first place. 7! You could have become a lawyer in that time. You could have been promoted to general manager at White Castle. Yet there's still no craft, no scraps of metal, no alien bodies dressed in Disney t-shirts and Mickey Mouse ears from their fieldwork. Nothing to confirm that what these individuals are saying about the government and extraterrestrial life is absolutely true. There only is what there's always been. People saying, because I say so. And it's not enough anymore. I know they're high-ranking military officials, and I know that they swore an oath of truth before beginning to speak at the hearing, and I know that they sound really convinced as they're giving their testimonies. But here's the thing. Humans have a pretty significant track record when it comes to lying.
People have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
The federal courts have uncovered a bizarre system of handling the tape recordings of the president's meetings and phone calls.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate.
I promise you will never hear Supreme Leader from me. He will never be called. Never.
Iran's Supreme Leader.
The country's Supreme Leader.
The Supreme Leader of Iran and the office of the Supreme Leader of Iran.
So the fact we've got 4 more people making claims about UFO crash retrieval programs, extraterrestrial contact, a secret arms race to reverse engineer alien tech, and all we've got to go on even after all these years are their word is like the red flag of red flags. And also, I know there are the videos, the alleged proof that extraterrestrial vehicles were caught on pilots' cameras. But film can be faked. Steven Spielberg made the T-Rex look real more than 30 years ago. A Hollywood rejected Navy-turned-government employee with enough inside resources could most definitely churn out the blurry, grainy footage that's been like the cream of the crop evidence for nearly the past decade. Just have the DoD endorse it and boom! You've got real UFO evidence. And yes, I could be wrong, but so long as the possibility for fakery is there, even if it's just 1%, the claims are so extraordinary, you have to take it as an absolute certainty. Now, some may also say, it's only the second congressional hearing, you've got to give them time to work through things before we can get some of that sweet, sweet evidence. And to that I say, there's been time. Again, it's been 7 years since the first 3 infamous UFO videos leaked. Think that's not enough? The entire city of Phoenix, Arizona saw a UFO in the night sky in 1997. Bob Lazar came out saying he was recruited by the US government to reverse engineer flying saucers back in 1989, and the alleged crash of an alien ship in Roswell, New Mexico, the thing that kicked off the modern era of UFO fanaticism, happened all the way back in 1947. People have been talking about this stuff for 80 years, and during all those decades, they made the same claims as these guys, that we're not alone in the cosmos, and that the government is hiding what they know, and blah, 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 blah. You ask me, these UFO hearings are just reruns. It's like talking to the kid who claims he has a girlfriend. She just goes to another high school on the other side of town, and you never ever see her. Imagine if you kept saying that for 80 years, and during all that time, she was around about as much as your pet dragon Dennis. At this point, if you want people to believe in aliens, you've got to pilot a flying saucer into the courtroom ASAP. You need to present the anal probe as physical evidence. Hell, showed in action. If I had to guess what the likely situation was, it's that these testimony givers think they're telling the truth, when in actuality, they've been misled. The whole "it's alien" shtick could just be a smokescreen for something else. But if we're not dealing with aliens, then what the hell are we? What's the real truth this whole party's trying to distract us from? What don't they want us to see? And who are they? Aliens or not, there are still definitely questions that need some answering here. And the answers could completely change how we see things. The government, their priorities, what they're capable of technologically. Maybe military scientists have figured out how to tap into science fiction levels of energy that, if distributed, could get the US and even the world off of fossil fuels, saving the planet from imminent environmental catastrophe. Technology that could save a lot of people's livelihoods. And make it so my Saturday Night Fever disco dance floor replica I've got constructed in my basement never has to be turned off. But instead, they're going to keep the science under lock and key as a kind of strategic advantage. We don't know. And we won't unless people keep pressing for answers by paying attention, asking questions, and voting others who share similar interests into power. Now, going forward in this video, we're going to set aside the idea it could all be fake, because even if everything these proclaimed whistleblowers say is true, and we are dealing with beings from beyond Earth, there's still a lot missing that I wish was there. Like information you can't just rip from any old episode of Ancient Aliens. When first I heard there was going to be a second congressional UFO hearing, I was as giddy as a kid on Life Day morning. I rushed to my little desk chair, brought up the live stream on YouTube, and started listening very intently. What new bombshell announcements were there going to be this time? The government's hiding more than it knows? Interesting. There's too much stigma around the topic to get anything done? Wow, the US is already in possession of UFO technology, as are other countries around the world? Well, I'll be an alien's uncle. That would certainly be shocking to me if I hadn't already heard it on every alien documentary ever. You watch this hearing, and it's like Conspiracy Theory 101. Basic stuff. The only difference now is it's being packaged and presented to you by high-ranking government officials, instead of, Netflix, and Netflix is better film quality. Now there's some stuff that's deceptively new, like this report detailing a special access program called Immaculate Constellation. The thing's pretty simple. It's just an effort to document UFOs, but you read through it, and the deeper you get into it, the more you start to realize there's nothing really mind-blowing inside. Like, for instance, the report says that some UFOs are saucer-shaped. Really? You don't say. What doesn't help the situation is when those giving their testimonies get asked an interesting question, only for them to answer,
"We would have to have a conversation in a closed session, ma'am. I would prefer to address it in a closed session, ma'am. Unfortunately, sir, I would have to have that conversation in a closed session."
Ah, yes, the infamous closed setting, also known as the SCIF, Sensitive Compartmented Information Facilities, otherwise known as the only place any of these people seem able to talk about anything interesting. Can I volunteer my house as a SCIF? I pinky promise I won't eavesdrop.
Confound it all!
Samwise Gamgee, have you been eavesdropping?
I ain't been dropping no eaves, sir, honest.
And of all the questions that don't have answers, frustratingly enough, one of them is the biggest. What is the intent of UFOs? According to Elizondo, UFO activity is high around humanity's nuclear capabilities. In some instances, they've even activated missiles. In others, they've turned them off. According to Immaculate Constellation, there was an incident where approximately 3 to 6 UFOs boxed in an F-22 fighter jet and escorted it out of a mission area. Clearly, there's an intelligence behind these things, and that begs the bigger question, what do they want? What's their intent here on Earth? The especially frustrating thing is that this is one of the few questions these high-ranking officials are actually comfortable answering, and yet they claim they don't have any idea either.
We've seen some of the capabilities, yet we have no idea the intent.
What's even worse is UFOs themselves don't even seem like they're going to give up their secrets. How many of them have landed in Times Square and given us a PowerPoint presentation explaining why they're choosing to spend their time here? About as many Brazilian pterodactyls as I've ridden to school. At this point, the answer could be anything. Maybe they're studying us to increase their knowledge base about the universe. Maybe they rented the space for a wedding, and we just happen to be the ants that came with the venue. And because everything is so unknown, you can't discount negative intentions as well. Maybe they're assessing our strengths and weaknesses in the event they need to take us on in a fight. Maybe they got around to watching MILF Manor and just decided we're too cringe to be left alive. But you can speculate all you want. The big questions still remain. Why are they here? What do they want? Where are things headed? And we just don't know. But there may be a way of at least crossing some options off the list. I debated adding this upcoming section to the video because it's really out of this world. We're taking quite a leap here, folks. It may even strike people as a little insane that I'm trying to make this connection, but the way I see it, this is the other half of the UFO conversation that's always existed, but even now, after all that's happened, it's still not being addressed. Maybe it's time. For as long as there have been people saying they saw a UFO in the sky, there have been those who claim they were taken aboard them, or even communicated at length with their occupants. For example, a couple by the name of Betty and Barney Hill, who claimed to have been abducted during an overnight road trip in 1961, recalled under hypnosis having conversations with the entities inside their craft.
Did they make any sexual advances to you?
No.
They didn't.
Nope. I asked the leader, I said, why did he stick the needle? Why did they stick the needle in my navel? And he said it was a pregnancy test.
In 1973, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker were fishing near Pascagoula, Mississippi, when they found themselves being fished up into an alien craft by creatures who reassured them they were not going to be harmed before performing a medical examination of the two.
And when they carried me inside, they seemed to just lean me back. This eye, well, I keep referring to it as an eye, and it moved up in front of me about this close, and it hesitated there for a few seconds, and it just started moving over my entire body.
In 1994, 62 pupils between the ages of 6 and 12 at Ariel School in Zimbabwe claimed to have witnessed a silver craft descend from the sky and landed in nearby fields. Allegedly, entities approached them to communicate a message about the importance of caring for the environment.
The world's gonna end. Maybe they're telling us the world's gonna end.
Well, why do you think they might want us to be scared?
Because we don't look after the planet.
Is this an idea that you have had before, that we don't look after the planet properly in the air, or did this idea come to you when you had this experience?
When I had this experience.
Given the mystery surrounding the intent of UFOs, maybe it's time those who experienced really close encounters had a chance to take the stand. And we could do that by looking for the same stuff. High-profile individuals with extensive credibility to hear what they have to say. Which sounds like I'm jumping off a cliff with my sanity, but if we're to treat it as absolute fact that fighter pilots have seen with their own eyes unidentified aerial phenomena that defy our current understanding of the laws of physics, then it's by no means a stretch, in my opinion, to entertain some of the people who claim to have been taken aboard such anomalies or even to have had conversations with the occupants, especially since there don't really seem to be any alternatives. Congressional representatives literally said during this last hearing multiple times that they've been stonewalled in their attempts to get answers.
When the American people and members of Congress ask, are reports of UAPs credible, credible, we're met with stonewalling. We're met with responses of "I can't tell you," and in fact, we're met with people not wanting us to have hearings.
And yet there's like zero push for this. You'd think that with all this official confirmation that yes, there's weird stuff in the sky we can't explain, there'd almost be a round of apologies toward all the people that for years have been pushed to the fringes of society, like pyrokinesis and watermelon flavored Oreos. It might not provide all the answers we'd ever want, but again, it could at least cross some options off the list. Like, how could the aliens be performing battlefield reconnaissance if they're talking to kids in Africa about the importance of caring for things like trees? When Hitler invaded Poland in 1939, his army's blitzkrieg tactics didn't exactly trim the boxwood hedges. And if they're not a threat, we can instead devote our time to studying and learning about a phenomenon that challenges our current understanding of the world as we know it. Through those discoveries, we could make advancements in vehicular travel, consumer technology, even energy production, all things that would empower individuals and make the world a better place. Like making it so we can all have our very own Saturday Night Fever disco dance floor replicas. Just think of the possibilities. Which is a lot more focused than we are right now, where we're sort of just gawking at the sky, mouths hanging wide open in awe, just trying to convince ourselves that we're seeing what we are. We've gawked for 80 years. If you really dig into UFO lore, it seems like we've been gawking a lot longer than that. Let's close those mouths and start pressing for answers before a moth flies in it and ruins our day.
Mother